I feel like I'm meeting up with an old buddy, Anthony. So I said I'm going to grab a cocktail. What's going on, gang? Doc and Jock podcast. Coach Joe, Doc Danny, and the other guy in the Skype chat, who I will say is cocktail free, Anthony Almada. Fourth time's a charm on the podcast. Happy to have you. Our vasectomized brother from another mother, a guy that always floors us every time he's on the show with his information, wealth, and knowledge. Anthony, happy to have you back on the show. How you doing, buddy?
Happy to be the only sober soul with my mocktail. Thank you.
Do you have a mocktail too, sir? Oh, you don't mean you're not making fun of my ponytail. You're talking about your lack of drink. I got it.
My beverage.
Well, cool. So we're talking about beverages. You mentioned that you have a nice microbrew in the back of your car that's not chilled out. So before we get into BCAAs, just tell us about this little Maytag inspired. Tell us about this microbrewer you got in the back of your car.
Anchor Steam. And it's not steam made, but it's from San Francisco, and Fritz Maytag of Maytag washer dryer fame and the Legacy family took it over, I believe, in 65.
Wow.
And if you look inside their bottle caps, they have different dates of different significance. 65s, and they take it over. And I think they also happen to make a fantastic gin.
Okay.
They're a different brand. And they also make I think it's a whiskey or a rye now, which I'm not a whiskey or rye or Scotch guy. But I've heard that's very good. But Anchor is my go-to beer. My great uncle, my dad's uncle, he was a scientist, a chemist, and we used to go to the beach in San Diego, and he would say the prime time of the day was on the beach around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and around that time, everything settles down. He'd pull out this Anchor Steam beer, and it's just a very rich memory. My favorite beer.
It's great. I recently, the interview hasn't been out yet, or it might be, but I went out to a place called Stout Ridge, and I actually interviewed a biochemist who now makes wine, and his whole deal is he wants to make the same wine that they were making 200 years ago. So he's set up in the Hudson Valley. He's doing everything with gravity and grapes, and it was neat. But it's cool you got these biochemists. But we got into this conversation about how certain wine and certain foods, how they just elicit these memories, and it's cool how you can remember your uncle and whatnot. So Danny, to bring this, I'll say this: I'm drinking a bourbon rye. So that's what I'm on tonight. But Danny, what do you got? What do you got in your cup there, buddy?
This is an Eventide Brewery Kolsch. This is my neighborhood brewery, and these guys are great, man. I used to go down there and whoop my brother-in-law's ass in darts every once in a while, but he doesn't live here anymore. But he does listen to this, so I'm sure he will troll me on social media as soon as he hears this. And cool. But it's the truth. He's not very good. It's primarily why I would win. It's not really that I'm good. He just sucks.
Nice.
Yeah.
And just so you listeners know, we're recording this on a Tuesday, and for whatever reason, I decided to celebrate Tuesday. It was my son's second day of kindergarten. We've successfully navigated that situation, and everyone's happy.
Good man.
No problems with the school. But Anthony, fire up to have you. So we passed along some articles to you, and the supplement chatter is always great when you're on the show. And again, your wealth of knowledge with your background, Vitargo Global Sciences, cranking out great products, and then even with your past life with other companies, just really putting creatine on the map. So we thought it'd be cool to talk about BCAAs. A lot of folks taking them. I'm sure. A lot of them don't know why they're taking them, but they know that their buddy who's got big muscles does too. So if they take them, they'll get them, right? So we thought it'd be cool if you could kind of clear up some of that stuff, let us know your thoughts, and then maybe get into some of that research that we passed along your way. So what I know about BCAAs, Anthony, just to get the call going, and originally while I took them was it's something to help with recovery. It's going to help me build muscle and lean out, and I should supposedly take BCAAs that are higher in leucine for whatever reason. In your mind, kind of summarize what BCAAs are as a supplement, and then we'll just get the ball rolling and see what happens.
I first have to ask Doc, how do you spell whoop?
Whoop? Whoop? W-H-O-O-P?
I thought that was whoop. Like, whoop, there it is.
Oh, I'm going to whoop. I'll whoop his ass.
W-H-U-P. Whoop.
I don't know. I'll have to ask Brandon next time he gets an ass whooping.
And there's that drink I used to be around called can of whoop ass.
Yeah.
Okay.
It must be a southern thing, man. I don't know. It's common in our lexicon.
I'm gonna open one up. A can of whoop ass.
Exactly.
Came out. So, a branched chain amino acids, or BCAAs or BCAAs, there are three: leucine, isoleucine, and valine. And the branched chain just relates to their chemistry. If you saw them drawn on a piece of paper,
Okay.
they have a branch point. That's it. Nothing special beyond that. And they are essential to almost all mammal nutrition. In fact, if not all, because the metabolism that we have and other mammals can't make enough of them to continue making proteins. And that's a very important point. And I'll use the assembly line metaphor. If you have a car and you need 9 components to make that car, if you have only 3, let's say wheels and tires, that's 1 component, transmission 2, engine 3, but you have no suspension, you have no body, you have no frame, that stops right there. And so the key question to ask, and we'll reserve it to be answered later, is why would you want to take BCAAs? And I've long believed since the days of VAS in the early 90s that people will buy and try something if they believe or they've been told or they've been persuaded or brainwashed that it would, 1, increase their muscle mass, 2, decrease their fat mass, and or 3, increase their performance however it's described or defined. If the product is not going to do that, or if it doesn't do that, one of 2 things will happen. 1, it will lose favor and just disappear. It will just dissolve away. Or 2, if there's so much chatter about it, and it continues to be chattered about, and then other brands and other people are talking about it, then it becomes almost a requirement, like glutamine. Oh, I got to take glutamine.
Sure.
And people go into like a glutamine crisis. Oh my gosh, I'm going to waste away if I don't have glutamine. I got to get my glutamine, or I got to get my protein.
Yeah.
If I don't have protein the next 3 hours, I'm going to turn into a POW. And so the question is there or are there studies that are convincing, and do the majority of them show that BCAAs will do one of the 3? Different discussion. But that's why we're here.
That's right.
Well, I guess the question is then why would somebody want to take it? What do they think they're going to get out of this? You know, why? Because I see them a lot.
So I can recall very vividly in the 90s, and this is where HMB took root with us at EAS. And it was also introduced by Metrex. They put it into their Metrex powder back in 94, I think. Is that HMB is a downstream daughter or metabolite of leucine. And leucine has come into this star category of being this special branch chain that turns on protein synthesis and has magical properties, and everyone needs to take it. Okay, well, in a test tube or in a muscle cell, maybe in animals or when given via injection, it can do that in significant ways, but people don't buy or take a supplement just to turn on their protein synthesis, just to turn on the assembly line. They do it for one of those 3 reasons: bigger and or stronger or more endurance, or leaner, being defined as less body fat.
So most folks who are into supplements and who are training hard, and it almost seems like if you're training, you have to take supplements, right? That's become what you got to have your shaker with the different color juice in it after you work out or before. So that said, when folks are taking their BCAAs, trying to supplement something, trying to maybe generally, as I understand supplements or supplementation, you're trying to make up for something you're not getting in your diet. So kind of take the conversation backwards just a little bit. When folks are taking BCAAs, where might they be deficient in their diet, and where might these be occurring in our normal diet where we don't have to supplement with them?
Well, I believe that the majority of the listeners that we have now or on your show at any time overconsume protein from a protein need perspective.
Okay.
You think of a guy, and I'll focus on guys, and even in the CrossFit female athletes or functional athletes that we've dealt with that are females, they have been brainwashed or hammered into believing that they need a high-protein diet and that carbs are less important. And so they'll be eating amounts of protein that are comparable to guys that know that train, resistance train, or that do CrossFit, or they're bodybuilders. And there are a lot of girls that are involved in bodybuilding or figure fitness that have 30 gram protein meals 5 to 8 times a day. Not all of them, but it's common. And for their body size, it's excessive. So it's not, I don't believe, unless you get into the older, more frail people that aren't working out, it's not really a deficiency. It's much more effort reduction and convenience.
Okay.
It's very easy to get a scoop of powder or 2 scoops, put it into a little bit of water, shake it up and drink it rather than going and hunting, gathering a chicken breast or a fillet of tilapia, or going out and spending the money and waiting in line. So it's a very rare occurrence from all the athletes that I work with, or teams, where they underconsume protein or have an actual need. It's much easier to get in a supplement form.
So I guess the follow-up would be, in your opinion, if folks have, and again, this is a relative question, if we're eating pretty decently, if we're consuming enough protein, and again, the follow-up might be, even with whey proteins, everyone's taking that. Better whey proteins are said to have higher BCAA. So if you're getting adequate protein intake, do you really even need to take extra BCAAs on top of that?
I would say that the studies are mixed at the very best, or they would say no, take the more conservative approach. We did a study out of Baylor out of Rick Kreider's lab that was led by Chad Kirksick. He's a friend of mine. Chad did a number of studies, did a study on UCAN, that starch product. He's did some studies on Celsius, that drink, the energy drink. And we compared a whey encasing product. We compared a whey branch chain glutamine product or carbohydrate. And the whey casing had the greatest changes in body comp and also in strength. And so we did this in the early 2000s. It got published in 2006. And there are studies that go both ways. So I would say, if for something to really work and have a dramatic effect, the majority of the studies have to say, yes, it did this. And I would say that probably there are more studies that showing that branch chains don't have that effect on performance or muscle mass.
Interesting.
In athletes.
Now, what if, let's say had some type of lactose intolerance and whey protein was not something that you would want to take? Or let's say you aren't really want to take protein much at all. Is this something that somebody can supplement during their workout? Because I know this is typically, I see people taking this and kind of sipping on it while they're training, and I honestly have no idea why, but it just seems to be the go-to for people that are, they're not doing something super Metcon based, like something really, really high intensity, where they can actually sip on something. So in terms of using this and not using any other protein source, if you are deficient in this, is this something that would be good to use during a workout?
Well, I think when you use the sipping word, Doc, it ushers in a very different discussion topic. So imagine, and I may have talked about this with you before, but imagine that you have 10 little pills in front of you. They're little like Tic Tacs, and each one has 10 milligrams, and every 10 minutes you take one, and it has 10 milligrams of caffeine. So every 10 minutes you take one, and you take a total of 10, so you get 100 milligrams over 100 minutes. Another time you take 100 milligrams in one tablet at one time. Which do you think will have a more profound effect that you would equate to a caffeine effect?
I would think taking more at once. I mean, I don't know.
Exactly, the bolus, because there's a drug effect, and so the higher the concentration, then it starts to turn on the adrenal glands and starts scratching. Hey, we're here. Knock, knock. Release your adrenaline. Hits the brain. Things start happening. You feel more alert, focused, cognitive function improves, your endurance improves, fatty acids are released in the blood. All that happens. Sipping would not have nearly as dramatic effects. So if you look at the studies that have been done with branch chains, they don't have people sip on something during a cycling ride, they have them take a huge amount or a bolus all at once 30 minutes before. They don't take beet juice and sip beet juice for 2 hours before. They take a big half-liter glass 2 hours before. They don't take 200 milligrams of creatine monohydrate every half hour. They take 5 to 8 grams at one time. So sipping to me is silly and it's misinformed. If you're going to get the pharmacologic effect, and branch chains are used as a fuel by muscle, but it's a trivial amount. It's not 40% of the calories you burn. It's maybe a couple percent. But the thing that's interesting about branch chains is that they may, and the data are mixed, they may change brain chemistry and reduce the perception of fatigue.
Yeah, and
so you don't feel as tired.
And I guess that was the research that we had passed along to you there. And before we get into that, the current stuff that's out about central fatigue and cognitive fatigue, I want to kind of go off on Danny's point in this sipping thing. So what if folks take this sipping analogy and take it to heart and say, okay, I'm not going to sip my BCAAs. I'm not going to sip my creatine. What I'm going to do is take the huge dose 3, 4, 6 times a day. Is there going to be any downside to folks who just start treating BCAAs like it's water, and every time I take a water, I'm going to put a scoop of BCAAs in there, and then all of it, because this is what we hear, and I think we talked about it on our last time in our ketosis talk, where when you go to like the Arnold Classic or some of these certain conventions with athletes, you see, yeah, they got the cups, they're sipping BCAA. So is there, I would say, just to round out the conversation before we get into the current research, is there a downside to just filling up on this stuff, and could the body react negatively to it?
Well, I don't think it's ever been described, but I think that the most significant downside would likely be economic.
Okay. It's going to be not cost-effective.
It could be a gut intolerance or loose stools, but I think it would be wasteful. And like I said before, if you have only 3 components to build a car, 3 amino acids, branch chains, and you need 9, you're not going to turn on protein synthesis all the way to make a new car and more cars behind it. And so the most telling reinforcement of that was Dr. Bob Wolfe or Robert Wolfe, Robert R. Wolfe, WOLFE. His lab has given birth to some of the most brilliant minds in protein metabolism. And Bob literally wrote the book on protein metabolism. And he gave a lecture at International Society of Sport Nutrition a couple of years ago. And I had the chance to speak with him. I'd been to his course in Galveston, Texas, on protein and fat and carbohydrate metabolism, how to measure it in muscle. This is back in 1996. And I'd asked him, what are your thoughts about branched chain amino acids? And he said, well, you can take them, but if that's all you're getting, you will not be able to make protein and have sustained protein anabolic effects. You have to have them all present in adequate amounts. And that's why having a protein meal does that, because it brings along the leucine. If you're a vegan, well, to me, a vegan may want to spike their protein powder or their meal with branch chains. Or if you're an older person, let's say north of 65, some studies have shown that if you spike a low protein dose with leucine, it will have the same effect anabolically in muscle, short term, as 20 grams of whey protein. So if you, and can you imagine that one of your mates having only 5 grams or 6.5 grams of protein for a meal? No, it just doesn't happen.
That's right.
It just doesn't happen. They have 50 grams. I'll have 3 chicken breasts and a sweet potato. And what's that magical food? Oh, bacon wrapped date. Yes, I'll have that too. And now they have a 75 gram protein load. Yeah. And that's a surfeit. It's an excess. And they're getting a whole bunch of branch chains.
So just to, Dana, I don't mean to interrupt you there, but so just to go on to this point that Anthony brought up about the inadequacy of only having 1 or the 3 that are associated with BCAA. So this myth, and I brought it up at the very beginning, the leucine. Is there any validity to the bro science behind take the BCAA with the highest leucine content, or should we be searching for a BCAA if we are the vegan or if we need to supplement this? If we are going to look for the best BCAA, should it be one that has a ratio? Because you see on the labeling, the ratio is a big deal, and they seem to really hammer that situation. So is there validity in this ratio component of making one BCAA better than the other?
Well, we don't like to live in the world of chemistry, so it doesn't matter to me what what the ratio is because that's all chemistry or that's just math. Let's see the head-to-head comparison of a 4 to 1 blend to one that's 12 to 1 to 1. Where's the head-to-head comparison where the actual amount of BCAAs is the same, but the ratios are different? So each time you get 10 grams every day, and let's follow them out for a month or 2 months to see who gets stronger and or faster and or more muscle mass after doing that. It's never been done.
Oh, there it is.
It's a huge myth of these ideal ratios. And so we ask retailers and athletes, hey, call that company up and ask them for the study head-to-head against any other blend, equal amounts of branch chains, where they showed in humans, published in a scientific journal, that the outcome over weeks of use is superior. It does not exist. Doesn't mean it's better. It doesn't mean it isn't better, but it is pure hype fueled.
Well, when we look at the central fatigue kind of research, and the two articles that Joe's wife pulled, and we looked at those, that seems like it could be a pretty interesting opportunity for certain types of athletes that have high training volume to be able to recover from that central nervous fatigue, not necessarily maybe build muscle, but maybe accumulate more volume. Like for instance, like a CrossFit athlete or even a weightlifter. I know, when I was doing a lot of weightlifting, I would just be fried. Like I just wasn't fast, and my workout was pretty much done by that point. So, is this something where if we look at central nervous fatigue and how it plays in with that, could this be a possible supplement to help people that participate in a sport that really demands a lot of that?
Well, again, the data go both ways.
Yeah.
And so there have been studies where they have actually injected tryptophan in, and tryptophan is, shall we say, the competitor amino acid that antagonizes the effects of BCAA. That's why they'll measure the tryptophan and BCAA ratio in the blood, and that was shown to have produce no fatigue. And I think that the biggest challenge of those two papers that you sent over is that they didn't use branch chains alone.
That's right.
They had other goodies mixed in. So you can't say it's branch chains. It's this whole cocktail. And it may be a mocktail, going back to our original discussion. So we don't know, but it's kind of cool to give it the BCAA title, where in actuality it isn't BCAA. Throw in arginine and throw in citrulline. And they didn't have a BCAA alone group, which would have been very interesting.
Yeah.
Probably because we don't have enough money. So let's just do this against nothing. And if there's a company behind it, well, let's just show that it works. We don't care we don't want to see if it is any better than BCAA's alone, because then it's kind of really generic.
See,
I don't know. And a lot of studies are done where they have these cocktails of 8 ingredients, but they're given the title of it's a BCAA study. No, it isn't. It's a full 9 or 10 or 8 ingredient study.
Well, in this one, it was 3, and fair enough. I think that's an awesome point to make. So for a layman who maybe is starting to dabble in some of these, let's get some peer reviewed stuff. Let's get away from Men's Health and let's actually read some stuff. Let's read some real peer reviewed articles, and this would maybe be a great place to talk about that. How might folks even decipher? Some folks might not read it and see it that way. When you look at this type of a study, we can kind of break it down. In your opinion, the findings of this one, are they interesting at least? And I guess you would say maybe the next step is let's just do one at a time. But then how can folks kind of go through the weeds of this research?
Well, these to me were very loosely designed studies.
Okay.
And what the heck does that mean? How would I know what's a tight study and what's a loose one? So to me, I always like to tell people this: because usually there's a company behind a product that you're considering to buy. Make the company earn your business. Almost all companies have a toll-free number. You call them up, hi, my name's Anthony, I'm kind of a science geek, and I have a trainer, just make it up. And he was telling me, or she was telling me about this product, and I was wondering if you could some of the studies on it before I buy it, because I kind of like to read them first. And first of all, well, you'll often almost always be passed to some other person. Well, our R&D person's not here right now. Well, don't you have them available, like on your company drive? Or, well, I don't know. If you're a company with science on your actual product, everyone in that company should know that, from the front desk to the guy that is putting out the rat pellets in the warehouse. Everyone should know that. And yet it's very, very rare. So if you do get that study, I tell people, have them wait on the phone, give them your email address. Okay, here's my email address, anthony@vitargos2.com. Can you send it to me? All right, there it is. Okay, now can you walk me through it? Where is your actual product mentioned in the study? What page? It's on 314. Okay, is it the right column or the left? Make them work.
Sure.
It's about a 5-minute phone call. Once you get the right person, okay. Oh, what was the dose? Oh, 20 grams. Wow, what does the label say? 4. So it's 5 servings. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Why don't you have 20 grams serving on your label? Well, that'd probably be too expensive. Oh, so you're saying your product for it to work would be too expensive for me? You do it in almost an innocent, ignorant way, sure, and it changes the dynamic. And now they're teaching you, and you will learn things that you would never learn otherwise. Have them do the work for you and point out, there's our product, and were these they were untrained. What kind of people were they? Oh, they were all blank ethnic group. Well, that was done in blank country. Well, why wouldn't I be different? I'm not of that ethnic background. And people are different ethnically and genetically. These are all the things you start to ask that anyone could ask.
Well, what journals are your favorite ones to actually look at? I mean, the ones that you would say, they put out some really reputable stuff.
Okay.
What do you think?
Well, there are probably 5. Journal of Applied Physiology, Journal of Physiology. The first one is from an American society. The other one was from a British society. They just had a joint meeting in Ireland about a month ago. The Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism. That's more along the lines of body composition. Every now and then, diabetes has an interesting study. In fact, diabetes has had a study showing that whey protein induces insulin resistance in postmenopausal women. And there's some studies showing that. Maybe mediated by leucine, that it can make your body resistant to the actions of insulin. Wow, I didn't know that. That's never talked about in sport nutrition. Still being teased out, but human studies suggest that. The medicine or American College of Sports Medicine journal called Medicine and Science in Sports and Exercise. So some of your listeners may have heard of a product called Hot Shot, which is a mix of spicy and, shall we say, pungent botanicals, red pepper, ginger, and they've done a lot of push because one of the founders is a Nobel Prize winner unrelated to that, and they have some interesting athletes behind it. Well, in that journal, a number of years ago, have you guys ever heard of pickle juice to treat muscle cramps?
Oh, yeah. I've taken a shot of pickle juice before.
And there's an actual product called pickle juice.
No, I'm an Eagles fan.
The first study was done in that journal with actual Velocip pickle juice.
Okay.
We published a number of studies in there with on creatine and a number going back to the 90s. So that's a well-respected journal. I would say those are my top probably 3 or 4. European Journal of Applied Physiology, not as rigorous. Excuse me. My mocktail is burping up on me. Let's see. Journal of International Society of Sport Nutrition. I'm a co-founder of that organization. It's not nearly as rigorous, but there are a lot of studies on supplements there. And Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research, much less rigorous and detailed, but there's some studies in there. But I would say and also American Journal of Physiology, Endocrinology, and Metabolism. That would be my other top one.
So going back to the research question and deciphering some of these articles, you bring up populations, and you brought up the ethnicity portion, and the two articles that I passed along to you were about Taiwanese folks,
right,
and one was a handball team, one was about I think a judo group. So when folks look at these populations, what should they look at in terms of, is there going to be a crossover to them? There's a difference between, a Taiwanese handball player and a Polish American who weightlifts, and drinks bourbon when he podcasts. So, again, when looking at this population section, how much crossover can we expect, and if any?
Well, to me, that's a very intriguing question. It was Taekwondo.
Taekwondo.
And what is always, to me, the best way to start that discussion is there are certain drugs that do not work, for example, in African Americans. They do not work. Period. They don't work.
Got it.
You give them to a non-African American, and they work. And so when we recognize that, and that's called pharmacogenomics, how the genes will influence how a drug responds, we have very little evidence on that in relation to supplements. And so if you're going to take studies done in Asians and apply them here, well, they may never do a study like that over here. So we like to use the hashtag test, don't guess. So, I think it's always important, because there are a lot of studies that will never be done that will still, because of product claims, will inspire somebody to buy it and try it. If you're going to buy and try something, let's take baseline measurements of where you're at now, and perhaps it could be performance, or ideally a good body composition assessment, ideally a DEXA. You can get a DEXA, dual energy X-ray absorptiometry, for under $100 now. State of the art. You get your bone density at the same time for your whole body. Get a cool image to throw on your wall and scare your spouse, your girlfriend, or your boyfriend, and use it as a benchmark and see, okay, after a month of using this, let's go back and test again. If you're really serious and committed, don't just guess, well, I think it's working. Either it does or it doesn't. Let's make it as objective as possible. And so I think if a person is willing to try BCAAs, and this is kind of related to your question, is you may be a responder to BCAAs and Doc may not be. Doesn't mean they don't work, but for your unique metabolic biochemistry, you could be a responder to branch chains, everything else being held equal compared to Doc. And the only way you'll find out is to try it.
Well, and that's interesting, because before the conversation, and it was funny, when we were all on together, we were talking about our booze and your lack of bourbon over there, Doc, Anthony. But while you were gone, you left and you said, I'm going to go let biology take over. And while Danny and I were talking, he asked about if I was messing around with Vitargo still and whatnot. And I kind of told him, when I supplement, I'll take nothing for, 2 to 3 months. And then I'll reintroduce what I know I respond to. And then maybe I'll add something else. And because what I've done, and I've kind of gotten away from taking the cocktail supplements like we were talking about. And, for me, it's base things, creatine monohydrate. It's things like Vitargo, which is going to be a carbohydrate supplement, and trying to find the best things that I find that works for me is a systematic approach to supplementation. Just to kind of follow up on that question, is that kind of a smart way to find out that, hey, do I respond to this or do I not respond to that? Is that kind of what you're talking about?
But I would ask you, do you take measurements that are objective, or have somebody else take a measurement of your baseline to see how you change over time rather than just how you feel or your body weight?
What I look for generally when I'm going to supplement with something, it's going to be, I'm going to do the mirror test. I'm going to use the scale, and I'm going to use performance, just like you had talked about, right? Kind of intuitively, the conversation with myself has been, just like you mentioned at the beginning, is it putting on muscles to help my performance, and does it help my body composition? So do I do the big scans and blood work? Not particularly, but I will say that I do a decent job of measuring kind of baseline performance, and I really try to get away from the feeling. And for me, I know decently that I'm a pretty big responder to creatine, and along with that, anything that I take when I take with creatine also seems to help. So what's that mean? So creatine's probably the one. So the one that I like to do when I'm not on a supplement, and that's maybe the time that I'll introduce something new. But for me, what I'm on right now kind of is generally, for me, it's creatine monohydrate. It's a carbohydrate supplement when I'm really working hard, and I take a multivitamin and fish oil, and that's generally my prescription that I offer for most people, and I haven't found that I'm not the snowflake that responds well to anything fancy. To be honest, my recent experiment was with what's the one that was recently talked about, ashwagandha. Supposedly there's some research saying that it's better than creatine. So I said, okay, well, let's give it a go. I don't know. I had some lucid dreams, right? That might have been about it. But I can say that in my own kind of novice research, I'm not the snowflake that responds well to many of these kind of designer supplements or what's going on out there.
Lucid dreams, and you woke up with a copy of the Kama Sutra in your hands.
Yeah, that's right.
How did that get there?
Yeah, wifey.
How does that happen?
Wifey made me get rid of it. Yeah, she said, "Get this out of the house." Yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, I've got a question for you. So, all right, let's say I've got $50, and I'm budgeting this to my supplements for the month, right? And assuming, let's just say that's where it's going, and I can't, spend this on food or whatever it might be. All right, $50. Where do I spend my money the best in terms of wanting to look better?
Naked or with clothes on? That's an important bifurcation there.
Hey, we're going to Europe next month. Come on.
Naked. There you go. Yeah. With Speedo weather.
Okay. Well, would that mean, but still that could be lose belly fat or gain an inch on your chest. I don't.
Okay. All right. Let's say drop body fat. I think a lot of people, that's their goal. So I think they'd be interested in figuring out what they could what they should spend their money on. Because look, they're going to spend their money on stuff. I know people will drop so much damn money on supplements every month, and I don't know if it's just packaging, whatever it is. They think they spend $200-300 on supplements, and then all of a sudden they're going to be fit. But that's not how it works. So $50, I want to drop body fat. What do I buy?
A layaway plan for liposuction.
There you go.
Most effective overnight success.
That's
Just
good.
pay for the next several years. If that's the objective, dropping body fat, and everything else is the same,
Yeah.
and you're not changing your diet, so just a pill or a powder that would do that for me.
Yeah. Is there? I guess is a good point as well.
And it's legal, and it's a dietary supplement, not a drug. I would say there really isn't that I would point you to that I would have the confidence this is going to achieve a significant drop in body fat, everything else being the same.
I think that's an unbelievable statement from a guy who's done a lot of research and in supplements. The definitive answer there is you have to kind of do the work, whether that's holding the company accountable, whether that's holding yourself accountable and doing some real research and really getting some baseline results. So let's say, in your opinion, just follow up with Danny's and get a little bit more specific. Let's say I wanted to test the market, and I'm training 3 days a week. I'm interested in improving my body composition, looking good naked at the beach this summer. I got 3 months to do it. And I just want to introduce something new that I think is going to improve my body composition. Just to kind of run that baseline. I don't know if it's going to get results, but I want to test to see if I do get results. In your opinion, what's the best supplement out there with a track record that's going to maybe elicit some sort of body composition result?
Everything else being the same, just one supplement?
Yep.
Creatine monohydrate, hands down.
Very good. So I think we've kind of mentioned that before. We've done creatine is king on this show, and in my experience, and I would say I'm not better than everybody, but I think I'm better than most, in at least having some sort of a system to see if a supplement gets the effect. Rather, I've had some buddies tell me, "Well, if I think it works, and that's good enough for me." And then, in my opinion, I'm like, "Well, why do you have to spend $50 to think something works? Why don't you just take a salt tab? Why not just take a tablespoon of salt or baking powder?" So the whole placebo and marketing thing, I think, comes into play. Super interesting conversation when you get into this. And I'll ask you an interesting question. Are we ever going to move to a place in supplementation where the government take notice or there's more regulation to it? And does that whole thing come into play where it's just kind of the wild, wild west and you can put what you want out there, right?
It's there right now.
Yeah. So what do you mean it's there right now? Excuse me.
Well, I could, if you guys came out here,
Okay.
I could take you to probably 10 stores that have steroids, pro hormones, DMAA, and a bunch of other goodies behind the counter.
Sweet.
No problem. Let's go.
Yeah.
Overnight, we're taking the red eye.
Let's
forget that. So they're out there. They're just under the radar, and it's who you know.
Sure.
And I'm sure that they're all over the country.
Okay.
And I just saw, in fact, I just saw a magazine sealed with another insert about pro hormone review. And in the world of physique sport, and we've talked about this in CrossFit, especially, and it's an Olympic year, the drive to succeed or win and all of the accoutrements or the benefits that come from that, from money, from being more attracted to the gender that you're after. It doesn't have to be the opposite sex. It doesn't matter to me. Just someone that people that you want to look at, or that want them to look at you and admire you, and fame, and having your picture or video of you. It's very alluring for some people. And so and because we don't see people dropping like flies or like maggots from taking something, that perception, I know that guy's been using it for 9 years. He looks great.
Yeah.
No problems. He gets checked up every quarter by his doctor. It's a very rare occurrence of a severe medical adverse reaction with drugs. And if it does happen, it's hush-hush like a shark attack. We've had probably 25 great white shark sightings off the Orange County, Southern California coast.
This summer?
This summer? You've never heard about them on your side. And the same thing over in Florida. They happen all the time in Florida. We don't hear them over here. They're buried. Uh-huh. There are stories that only the locals know. There was a shark attack of some triathlete. Had she not been on Memorial Day, and she was approached by the lifeguard boat who saw her like flopping around the water in an interesting way from a couple yards away. They approached her. I got this from a friend that knows the chief lifeguard, and she was surrounded in a pool of blood. And she had either the state of shock or the composure to say, "I think something bit me." They had her medevaced and in the trauma surgery center at UC Irvine in 25 minutes. Had they not been out there, she would have bled out and died. So people just don't know about these things unless you go searching for them. And so I think with that being so prevalent, and this being an Olympic year, and this Olympics just ended, it will be interesting to see who gets popped in the upcoming weeks. Who has to forfeit the medal now?
Well,
Forget
Lochte
and his shenanigans.
That's right.
Yeah, that's true. You know, I actually work with a lot of stunt guys here in Atlanta, and you know, many of them are on HGH, and they get it from overseas because it's a lot cheaper. In fact, I got this. One of my buddies, and I think he listens to this, so I'm not going to name him, but he sent me this real sketchy email about how you could like set up a Yahoo account and a P.O. box and PayPal account, and then pretty much order whatever the hell you wanted. But they take HGH primarily because their job is to get tackled down escalators and run through walls and stuff. And so, and I don't know. In fact, they asked me this. One of my buddies asked me this last time I saw him. This was a few weeks ago. He asked me, he said, "Hey, what are the long-term effects of this if I'm taking," he's taking like half the recommended dose of whatever someone else told him. I don't know how much he's taking actually, but are there any long-term effects of people taking, you know, moderate doses of supplemented HGH?
Sure. So if he was my buddy, Jim, we're talking about you too. I don't know if his name is Jim. If he was my buddy, I would say get yourself checked every 3 to 6 months maximum for how your body is responding to insulin, because one of the major, this is in the prescribing insert, major side effects of GH can be diabetes. It can induce insulin resistance. Yeah. And notably, it can make organs and tumors grow. So if you ever have gone to or seen pictures of professional bodybuilders, primarily males, you will often see the six-pack that's super chiseled, but their stomach is bowing out.
Yeah. Tortoise shell.
Wow. The tortoiseshell, exactly.
Yeah.
Because the internal organs, including the intestinal region, have grown under the influence of non-selective growth hormone. It doesn't just, I just want only muscle and bone. I'm not going to touch the brain, not going to touch the joints, I'm not going to touch the organs. It makes them all grow, including tumors, potentially. And so these are things that one may be dealing with a decade from now when they're doing lower dose. We don't know. It could be completely without effect. There may be a protective effect. We just don't know.
So check, get the insulin resistance checked. And then I'll tell you, you bring up selective growth of muscles, and it doesn't happen. You're taking HGH, everything's going to grow. You see a lot of selective fat loss. You got fat on the legs, this supplement's going to clear it up. Your butt's too big, this will clear it up. You want to lose belly fat, take this. Is there really a legitimate supplement out there where if you're going to take it, and let's pretend they are exercising regularly, and a decent plan, they got a good trainer, one we all respect. If you add some type of a supplement, is there one out there that's going to help you spot reduce fat?
There are two brands, and this, I think your listeners will like this. Two brands, Dyson and Oric, and these are liposuction home kits, where you apply it to the area of need and it removes the fat. Now, it remains to be shown. I mean, there was a company from Japan. I actually put a product together based on this one study published in a very good journal, Nutrition Journal, British Journal of Nutrition, where these lactoferrin, which is a tiny fraction of milk, and it has antibacterial effects, and they showed that when they gave people lactoferrin with a couple other goodies mixed into it, that it reduced fat around the abdomen. Is that selective fat reduction? Perhaps it was. That study has not really been replicated. It was done in part by the company that sells it, sponsored by them. Be nice to see that, but that is a holy grail supplement. And we don't, unless you do some really thorough measurements of all body fat, you wouldn't know if other parts of body fatness were also reduced.
Interesting.
But that would be the ideal supplement if you could target it.
So you bring up the replication effect, and we'll go back to and kind of just to tie all this together and give our folks some good information. Kind of, we're a little bit all over the place, but I think it's great information. But bring up replication, and this one study you were a part of, or at least made a product based on it. The study wasn't replicated. The interesting thing about our BCAA articles we sent you is they were two separate articles with different populations that did replicate the data under this kind of double-blind placebo crossover thing. Is there validity in, okay, we got the research, they've done it once, they've done it twice, they've done it 3 times. When we're looking at research articles, is that also something to look for? Maybe you find one, we'll go find the other.
Well, I'd say let's find all of them. And so there's what becomes a challenge, because if you call a company up or go to a website or some self-anointed guru, they'll point out to you the studies that support their belief. And that's the magical thing about the internet, is that everyone can have a belief and find supportive information for that belief.
Even about Ryan Lochte, right? I mean,
we shall see. The video cameras tell the story there.
Yeah, that's right.
But what is, and we have yet to see, is a clearinghouse. So where is there a website that somebody can look at all the studies done in human athletes with BCAAs, all of them? It doesn't exist. It does not exist. And so you will find studies, oh, look at this. Wow, I'm going to buy it because, I'm not going to buy it because of that. And so that becomes, it's daunting. It's like going through the grocery store. What can I eat? What's not bad for me? I don't know. It's our menu. It's just too much information. And it's too demanding to sift through it. And with time being so precious, people just either give up or I'm just going to try it. Or I'm not going to try it because it's $40. It's very challenging.
Well, how much research do you see that's just frankly biased? I mean, you're putting money into this study because you want to see if your product works. You're not going to want to put out a study that shows no change or, negative change. So, I mean, how much of that just doesn't even get published?
We call it the boneyard. So a number of years ago, I was asked to contribute to a biotech annual review about studies in the dietary supplement industry. We estimate, right, probably now there maybe are 400 studies done a year on different ingredients and products, including performance nutrition products. And what has evolved over the past decade are private companies that do research on a paid-for-hire role, and the sponsor company or an individual gets to keep the results unless they tell the company who did the study, publish them, or present them at a scientific meeting. So if you sponsor a study showing you want to show that your deer antler velvet plus creatine plus monohydrate plus BCAA product works, you ideally would go to a for-profit private research center and have the confidentiality agreement in place, or you would hire your attorney to do that. So now it's attorney-client privilege protected, which has been done. I've been involved in a few of those as a consultant after the fact. And if the study doesn't come out the way you want it to, it never gets revealed to the public, and you could still be marketing that supplement. I'm aware of many examples of that, at least a dozen. And so you would know. So going back to the question, to me, you look for studies done at different universities because they almost always have to publish. And two, you look for different groups that are not connected to test the same product or ingredient in different hands. So a lot of studies are done by a lab that has an interest. Oh gosh, if we do another study, if the study shows a positive result, they'll give us more money to do more research, and we can pay our staff, and I can make my stipend and all that stuff done, and maybe get taken out for a nice dinner and give a presentation at this annual meeting. All that blends into it. But if now it goes to a different group over now in England, and it started over here at Virginia Polytechnic or whatever, now it's a different group that isn't connected, that lends a lot of validity with other groups validating what you found. That's what happened with creatine monohydrate. There are now probably over 150, if not 250 different laboratories that have validated its efficacy. Not two, but hundreds. That's the ultimate.
Well, at no shortage is the information worthwhile, and from a researcher like yourself who's been involved, these tidbits are great to take away. So find varied sources, folks, and kind of watch out for this kind of, I hate to get a little political, but this kind of Clinton Foundation pay-for-play supplementation style, get your research published stuff, right? So we can kind of go through all that. So I guess, is there going to be any avoidance of this kind of pay to get on the shelf and get this on my label? I mean, is that really anything that's avoidable?
I don't know what you mean by that, pay to get on the shelf.
Well, like example, I'm going to find the company that's going to say that my product does this. So I'm going to pay them enough to make it happen. And then when it happens, I can slap it on my label.
Well, I think the Darwinian effect, natural selection, plays out. Because if you go go crack open a magazine that had supplements 2 years ago. Okay. And see how many of those are still around.
There you go. Very good.
It's not many.
Time tested. Got it.
And I think that there's always that drive, well, gosh, how can we make whey protein better? Well, the newest push has been native, undenatured whey. That's come out there now in a couple different brands where it's not been exposed to heat. And so we had a couple retailers because it says on the label, research studies, and they make these claims. We had a couple companies that were marketing this be called, and they have no data published whatsoever. Nobody makes the question. So it's like going to giving a seminar. Well, gosh, I think I'll know more than anybody there. And then in walks an MD, PhD who's done 50 studies on what you're talking about, and you see this hand come up. Holy shit! Oh no! Oh, what am I going to do now? What the heck am I going to do now? That doesn't happen. It's very, very rare because people like me just don't do that. We don't want to be the asshole that calls and gives a company grief. That's not fun. Yeah, I'd rather spend my time doing something that's creative rather than destructive. So it just doesn't happen.
Interesting.
So it's Wild West still.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of creative, what's new with Vitargo? What have you guys been working on?
Nice segue, Danny. Good job.
Nice.
We've combined it with branch chains.
Oh yeah.
As part of whey protein. No, we just finished up on Vitargo post hydrolyzed D-lactose whey protein with our all-natural zero-calorie sweetener in a chocolate brownie flavor. That will be taste testing at the Orange County Fitness Expo this weekend.
Awesome.
At Anaheim Convention Center. We are working on a Vitargo pre-workout with 2 different forms of caffeine and an ingredient or 2 that's naturally occurring that changes how the liver metabolizes or breaks down caffeine. So hopefully, and we're planning a study for this, we'll show in blood that the blood levels of caffeine and the effects are prolonged at a lower dose.
And interesting, and you talk about time-tested kind of supplements. Caffeine. We know caffeine's something that's very prevalent. Coffee companies popping up. It's in everything. I would say too. We brought up before about NO Explode products, and they're all kind of stimulant ridden. In your opinion, is caffeine still top dog in terms of stimulant? If you need that little. It's not fuel. We know carbohydrates are fuel, but if you need that kind of little kick to get going, in your opinion, is caffeine the best place to get it?
From an evidence perspective, yes. From a legal perspective, yes. From a widely held belief or experience, yes.
Very cool. So real quick, I got some funny little notes here written down. So we've brought in some great points up. Things like sipping is silly. In a very scientific way, we've kind of coined that tight and loose studies, right? Interesting. So get after the tight studies, the loose ones we want to avoid, right? And then we've talked about shark attacks, test, don't guess. And Anthony, I got to say, this has been, as always, a great conversation. But before we even kick it to close, me and Danny have to say thank you. We're trying to raise some money for Wade's Army, which is a cool charity to help kiddos with neuroblastoma, which is a terrible form of cancer that affects the littlest people, infants. And we all have kiddos here. And man, you jumped in and donated a couple tubs, and we got a couple people buying those tubs. And if we could, I think we're going to try and take you up on your offer. And if it's okay with you, can we keep that offer up until we get those 5 tubs purchased through donation? Fired up.
Absolutely.
And we want to say thanks for that. And man, Anthony, if we've talked about it before, but if folks want to reach out to you in the same way that you told them to, right? Make the company earn your purchase. If they want to earn Vitargo's purchase by talking to you and a reputable source over at Vitargo, how might they do that, and what's the best way to reach you guys?
Always best via phone. We have a toll-free phone number. Let's see. Gosh, that's so rare I call it. What is that number? How embarrassing. 877-436-7858. That's 877-436-7858. 24/7. Just say who you are, you want to chat, and my awesome executive secretary assistant Anna will set up a time for a chat. I chat with people all the time. It's not too common because people, that guy wouldn't talk to me, but happy to chat. I enjoy chatting with people. And speak about Wade's Army, I've known John Wellborn now for, about, I think, 8-9 years, when he used to be involved in CrossFit Balboa with, blank on his name now. Shoot, the guy that started CrossFit Endurance.
Brian McKenzie.
Brian McKenzie. McKenzie, of course. They were involved in CrossFit Balboa, and then John went on and started CrossFit Football. John's behind Wade's Army, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, John's behind that, and cool branding, cool foundation, cool stuff.
Great guy.
John's a guy that we've brought up with you a few times on this podcast. He's one of those, and we actually interviewed 2 of his minions, Luke and Tex, who are 2 of his coaches, and the jury's out on John Wellborn. If you haven't met him, he's a big dude, right?
He's a big man among men. Yes, indeed. Still.
Yeah, he's still doing it. But Anthony, this was a great chat, always a wealth of knowledge. And I have to say, just in a testament to you getting back to people, the fact is you've been on this podcast 4 times. Right. So the fact that you've been here 4 times is the fact that you are reachable, you are attainable. I've corresponded with Anna a few times, and she's always receptive. So guys, if you have supplement questions, you have questions about Vitargo, get on over there. ask questions. I think that's the big thing here. Ask questions, find out what's been around for a while, and guys, be a good consumer. And I think, Danny, if we do that, it'll prove that if you have a body,
you're an athlete.